Greetings, dear viewer, and welcome once again to our glorious Halloween celebration, belated or extended, as that celebration may be. This humble teller of tales takes no small amount of pride in being here to greet you for the 4th installment in our 24 installment celebration of horror and all things autumnal. As usual, today's video will feature 3 uniquely terrifying segments. 1, delving into a haunted location. 1, exploration of a fascinating occult factoid, and 1, investigation into the case of a most curious cryptid. I, of course, would be deeply and very personally offended were you to not join us for all 3 segments. However, if I'm honest, and I always am, I would find contentment in the moment should you join me in our first segment as we together break the seals of intrigue and concrete that have been placed upon the gloomy door to the Chase family vault in Barbados. The year is 1807, and the tropical paradise / British territory of Barbados is about to reach maximum levels of spook. The unfortunately named Thomasina Goddard has just been laid to rest within her family's crypt at a tender young age. Or was it a tender old age? Hard to say. Records are sparse. The vault is then purchased by the now notorious Colonel Thomas Chase in the year 1808, upon the passing of his 2-year-old daughter, Mary Ann Chase. It is said that Colonel Chase was a particularly nasty man, even by the standards of an island run by pasty, plantation-class, aristocratic, slave-owning colonizers. Essentially, if you called almost any of these characters a cracker, you would be absolutely right. Regardless of whether this characterization of Thomas was accurate, or if he was indeed a very useful engine The pain of loss stung all the same. Torn by grief, as he lay his daughter's tiny lead coffin next to Thomasina Goddard's weak AF wooden one. On July 6th, 1812, Dorcas Chase, elder sister to Mary Ann and last remaining daughter of Thomas Chase, would die. It is said, dear viewer, that Thomas Chase was as cruel to his own children as he was to those who served him, and that his eldest daughter starved herself to death in an attempt to escape her father's miserable cruelty. In August of that same year, Thomas Chase would take his own life. Later, of course, to be interred alongside the others in his family's dank, lonely crypt. However, when they opened the Chase family vault, they found the coffins strewn about, cast around the chamber, all higgledy-piggledy-like. Lead and wood alike, no less. Suspicion, of course, fell upon grave robbers or vengeful slaves, or even those slaves who had interred the children in the first place. After all, Chase's cruelty was notorious and made an excellent motivator, and quite frankly, those casting the blame in the first place were not exactly unbiased when it came to the act of pointing fingers to those they felt inferior to themselves. The coffins were then rearranged. Mary Ann's tiny coffin was placed atop Chase's coffin on the left, both leaden, heavy, and dense. In the middle, Thomasina Goddard's coffin, wooden and fragile. And on the right, Dorcas' coffin, lead, even as her father's and her sister's. September 25th, 1816. Brewster Ames is interred, to be set atop Mrs. Goddard's coffin in an orderly and tidy-like fashion. Only, when they opened the tomb, a frightful mess awaited them. The coffins had moved, with Thomas Chase's 250-pound coffin seemingly tossed across the chamber. The spookiness was intensifying. November 17th, 1816. Samuel Brewster is laid to his eternal slumber. The thing keeps dying. That's why I need a real teleprompter. Samuel Brewster was laid to his eternal rest within the Chase vault. At last, his long life of earthly toils seemed to be coming to a sweet end. If only they had followed his secret last will and testimony, hidden alongside his Confederate gold stash, hidden upon the lost island of Atlantis, and kept him and his weary bones far, far from the dancing coffins of the Chase vault. He would have, at last, finally put his weary feet to rest. Swaddled in there, soft, cushiony, grave booties. Once again, of course, the coffins were strewn about. Mrs. Goddard's damaged so badly, they needed to wrap the thing in copper wire to keep it held together, lest the bones spill free and wander the lonely night, chattering and smelling like bones. It seemed then that a messy, dance-filled afterlife awaited our dear Samuel Brewster, inventor of the Harlem Shake. As usual, the coffins were put back in a tidy order. Of course, once more, the crypt would be opened to inter its final resident on July 7th of 1819. Thomasina Clark. The crypt was once more a total mess. But finally, at long last, it was a mess of actionable interest to a wealthy British aristocrat, the first Viscount Combermere, Sir Stapleton Cotton. The floor was then covered in sand to catch the footprints of any intruders, and upon the door, seals of concrete to ensure that none could simply bust in stealthily, crawl upon their ceiling with spider powers, and mess the graves about, all upside down like. No one in or out, even if it's me, the first Viscount Combermere chortled to himself in rapturous glee. On April 18th of 1820, Lord Combermere would open the vault again to see if anyone had come and thrown around the 250-pound lead coffin with their freak mutant strength. Perhaps they had brought Wolverine or the Toxic Crusaders to accomplish this task once again. Of course, the tomb was a mess, with Goddard's coffin against the wall, and a chunk out of another where it seemed a child's coffin had struck it with immense force. The sand undisturbed. The seals unbroken. The crypt was emptied. The occupants spread around the churchyard, seemingly to prevent further troublemaking or squabbles between father and daughter. The crypt, of course, remains empty to this very, very day. This is, of course, the 19th century, meaning that the truth of these events was rapidly swept aside in favor of wild speculations and theories powered by Europe's keenest opium-powered philosophers and naturalists. Some would conjecture that the presence of 2 suicides within the tomb was manifesting a sort of a curse therein. Others wagered that a vengeful slave's
dark voodoo magic
was being exercised on the resting place of the hated Thomas Chase. Others would theorize that seismic activity or flooding were to blame, hurling the coffins about with the power
of nature's wrath.
But my favorite theory on the matter would have to be the one created and proposed by renowned deduction enthusiast and famed author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
The space must have been crowded with overheated Negroes, and when the slab was at once hermetically sealed, these effluvia were enclosed furnishing a possible source of that material power which is needful for material effect.
You heard that right, people. Apparently, black people's sweat is all that it takes to set 250-pound coffins a-bouncing around their crypt like a dancing bean. Jeez, the past is a wild, wild place. Man, am I glad to live in an age of reason where
Facts
and
logic
guide our day-to-day choices and decisions and worldviews and oh fuck! And also, this event is probably entirely made up. Have a wonderful day. Bye!
Tarot. Okay, where to start with this? Well, the earliest I can start is in the 14th century, where it's estimated, this isn't confirmed, but this is the best guess we can get from it, it's estimated that the particular playing cards that influenced the modern tarot deck were brought to Europe from Egypt. So they started in Egypt, 14th century, thereabouts. Now, we don't have a ton of information on what they looked like in Egypt, and we have even less information really on what happened to them once they get to Europe. Except for there are a lot of laws that banned them for being a satanic practice. If it's the one thing we're good for, humans are really good at keeping records of their laws. So, thank you, I guess. So, first record we can completely confirm is from John of Rheinfelden in 1377. And he describes a couple of the different versions of these cards as there's not one set, cohesive set yet. But he does describe the modern 4 suits of 13 cards consisting of suits of either clubs, coins, cups, and swords, or kings, ober, unter, and what was either called dames or queens, depending on where you were. Some of those you might recognize even, as the modern playing card deck is what influenced the tarot deck later. He also describes some other varieties, and we kind of, are getting the roundabout way of how tarot and modern playing cards are starting to look. Now, the modern tarot deck and modern playing cards are most heavily influenced by the ones used in Italy, Portugal, and Spain. And in 1440, we have the first closest record of what will become tarot divination cards in Milan, Florence, and Bologna. I'm not actually sure how it's supposed to be pronounced over there. I forgot to look. Sorry. Italians.
I believe the correct pronunciation is Bologna.
I don't think so, but okay. Anyways, the Milan deck especially, we actually do have some surviving cards from a couple of the upper class families that had them, they hired local artists and said, here, make me some fancy ones, basically. So it's here the records indicate triumph cards have been added to the normal 4-suited pack. There's a couple of different variations that we have a few card samples from, but we also have a couple of documents saying what the packs look like, the amount of cards in each deck, and largely sources tell me they were hand painted. So they still differ a lot from region to region, person to person. They're still handmade cards, and there aren't a lot that have survived, unfortunately. Some of the best preserved decks are from the 15th century, from the Duchy of Milan. And they're largely unified sets, but really they're kind of an outlier, as in terms of playing cards, their popularity didn't really increase until after the printing press. Wouldn't you know? The printing press. We owe it so many things. And the earliest known full set of instructions comes from a French variant that we do have most of the card sets for, and we have the printed instructions. And that manuscript was produced in 1637. So a lot of time has passed. Now, we don't see another revival of the game until the 18th century, but largely up until that point, France is really what's keeping the game alive. It's still played in different regions of Italy, but it's most popular in France. The 18th century revival sees the card games become really the most popular game played just about everywhere in Europe, except for Britain, the Iberian Peninsula, and the Ottoman Balkans, which we find a lot of really, really strict laws for banning them. When you know the 3 places they're not played in, there are really strict laws against having them. The French, they had another revival in the 1970s for the tarot game before it really reaches its biggest occult phase. And France still has one of the largest gaming communities, rivaled only by Milan. To this day, I should say, it's still really, really popular. If you go to France and you ask the right person, they might actually be able to teach you to play it, as it's been played for quite some time now. But the first documented use of tarot cards, well, they don't become really, really popular until after the 1970s for occult reasons, is in the 1750s. I know, we're backtracking a little bit. I'm sorry. I drew a graph because it was a lot going on while I was researching this. Because it's just like, tarot's a card game, tarot for occult. I had to line them up. But anyways, 1750s, first tarot deck to be made specifically for occult reasons is by John Baptiste Alliette, also known as the Etella cards. And those, the first largest publication of them is in 1789. They had an Egyptian theme. There are a couple still surviving, but we don't have very many of them. That and tarot decks in general continued to change and develop, and everyone again had their own illustrations based upon intended use and preferences from the one who was reading them. Okay, now we get to kind of the modern history of it. The most arguably well-known deck, the Rider-White deck, the Rider deck, the White deck, the Rider-White-Smith deck, however you want to put it. You know, it's that famous one that everybody starts with that I can't find my version of. It's published in 1903, and there have been thousands and thousands of reprints, and it is really, really famous. It's not that nice of a deck. But then from there, big occult phase, 1970s, and you see tarot become modern witchcraft and modern occult use. I personally like tarot. I really like it because it can be individualized while still having kind of standard meanings depending on what you're looking for. I own 3 decks. I have my fairy deck, I have the Rider-White deck somewhere, I don't know where it is, and I have this Night Vale deck designed by Jay Holloway, which I love. and I don't ever want to use it and bend the cards because it's just so nice. It's even got a bloodstone circle on the back, and so it's my favorite fucking thing ever. Okay, I'm gonna stop myself before I get even further off the tangent there. There's a lot of history to tarot as it is as a card game, as it is in its occult phase, and I've really just given you the basic rundown of it because there is so much to it, and because we have a lot of blanks in that, you know, paper cards don't hold up well to history sometimes. But you should go out there and do some of your own research as well, because it's a fascinating, it's just a fascinating kind of thing to study in history. And there are thousands of resources out there, and I do have a few links to different books that you can find on Amazon, and I will have Walter include those down below in the, you know, big about section, because there's no way that I'm going to read off these links to you. But thanks. Bye. I'm not going to throw my cards. That's a terrible idea.
The Chupacabra. The goat sucker. No, not like that. Get your heads out of the dirt. Nasty. Fucking nasty. The name literally translates to chupar, which means to suck, and cabras, which means goats. The name referring to the vampiristic reports of the creature drinking the blood of the livestock. The Chupacabra is much more recently reported than I once thought. The Chupacabra style of killings of livestock were first in 1975 in the small town of Mocha, and given the name Vampiro de Mocha, aka the Vampire of Mocha. And the first true sightings of the purported Chupacabra were first in Puerto Rico in 1995, which was exceedingly recent. Early skeptics suggest that these witnesses had been influenced by the Hollywood science fiction movie Species, which was released the same year and had a monster featuring a similar appearance to the first descriptions of the Chupacabra. These reports describing the creature as standing upright and resembling a large reptilian kangaroo with huge red eyes. But later reports from a variety of places talked of the Chupacabra with a different description. Smaller standing, of about 4 feet tall, and generally canid in appearance, but hairless. Of this type there were specimens produced, but all proven to be known canines, but with mange, resulting in their strange, almost alien appearances. Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Peru, and the southernmost parts of the United States. These sightings come in a variety of countries, and up until 2018, the reported sightings came from the Caribbean and the Americas. But then there was suddenly a journey happened with this creature, where there was a swath of sightings in Manipur, India. But these reports have been written off by the local authorities as simply street dogs with mange or some sort of other skin disease through forensic research. But nonetheless, the Chupacabra lives on. It is well known. It's the goat sucker. There's so many people have heard of it. Even Scooby-Doo has faced off with the Chupacabra. Keep your goats safe from the Chupacabra.
Thank you for watching Cryptid Corner. Join us in the next episode where we'll be teaching goats how to suck the Chupacabra. Well, seems like those goats had a bit of a bad time, didn't they? Thank you once again for joining us in this, our most proud and fourth entry into our glorious Halloween celebration. Now, I simply must insist that you join us on the morrow for our next video. A most wonderful video, to be sure, and one where we will get up to nothing but glorious monkey business. Well, that and maybe just a little vulture business as well. Until then, please, by all means, feel free to like and subscribe. Ring the bell. Also, click the notification button. One will spare you from the demon hiding in your room right now. The other, well, it's a mystery, I suppose. There is only one way to find out which is which.